Hello from my experience podcast listeners. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is your host, Jessica Fountain, and I am here today with my awesome co host, Robert Wilson. But I will be opening up the show today. And we would just want to take a moment to thank you so much for your continued support of the podcast, for your likes on our Facebook pages, Instagram, and just following our story. Thank you for listening. And Robert, we're just
Yes.
going to hop right in. How are you today?
I'm well rested. We've had a couple of snow days up here, so I haven't had to work in the past couple of days, and it's just been relaxing. But I have a 2 hour delay for tomorrow, so got to get back to it.
Yes, I I know we both took a nap prior to the show because we needed some. We're still resting from the previous episode of rest.
Yes.
Uh, but yeah, I had a busy day today and it was pretty much back to back. So my meetings, I am realigning. That's my favorite word when I don't know exactly what I'm have going on. I like to realign and get clarity to start my week. So usually that's how I do it on Tuesdays, which is the day we're recording this show. But needless to say, we're going to hop right in with our awesome guest today that will be joining us in dialogue. We have Dr. Arlecia, goes by Dr. Arlecia Simmons, who is an educator and content creator. Uh, I am really excited about this guest today because I have a personal friendship and relationship with them over the years, and just always somewhat of a mentor from afar. So, without any further ado, I am going to introduce Dr. Lecia Simmons. Welcome to From My Experience podcast.
Hello. How are you this evening?
I am well. How are you?
I'm yet holding on.
Yes.
Excited about February.
Yes, yes, yes. February is a good month. It's the month of celebration of all things black, and
Yes,
I like
yes,
it.
Yes.
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 So
Blackity black.
celebrating our talent. Yes, all of our many gifts and talents, and um, which you are very multi-talented. So that kind of is a great transition. I met you through education. However, you are also a content creator, and you focus on joy and bringing joy. And also, I think we have a unique spin on our approach to that in being very authentic. And so you do a lot of bringing your personality of Gullah Geechee culture to the forefront of your content, which
Yeah.
is, I think, very important to showcase who we are in our most simplest form, I would
Yep.
say. Which for me is country and culture, and
Mm-hmm.
for you is Gullah Geechee Low Country culture.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit more about that and how you want it to stay true to that.
Well, I was born in the low country of Charleston, and my grandfather's family, they are from St. Helena Island on the Tomfrit Plantation. So, growing up in the low country, you sort of have an understanding of your culture, but it's not emphasized. So it was only after going to college that I really gained a newer appreciation. Previously people would tell you you talk funny or would make fun of the ways in which you spoke and reference things. But then I realized like this sets me apart. And so, I realized the regional differences when I got out of Charleston, and there were people from the PD and people from the upstate. So I
Hmm.
was like, this is amazing. Like I'm unique and my culture is unique. And I just, at this point in my life, want others to embrace it with gentrification as well as the other changes happening societally. We're losing parts of our culture. So Gullah Geechee people are still very present in the Low Country. And when we talk about the Gullah Geechee corridor, we're talking about from North Carolina to Florida. So I think I share the role of an ambassador, of being one of those individuals. I don't necessarily sanitize or try to code switch who I am, but I try to remain true to who I am and try to help others alongside me on the journey of just educating them about the culture that is very rich and that has that direct connection to West African culture. So I'm excited to be a Gullah Geechee person, very proud of it.
As you should
Yes.
be. It is something to be proud of. When you said that you um, learned that part was very unique about yourself after college, was that like around what age was that? Or did you always like almost instantly recognize like this is something that I'm just not going to do?
Well, I mean, I knew, I think it was in middle school, we watched one of Pat Conroy's The Water's Wide, and we watched the movie Conrad or Conrack. And so that talks about the Fusky Island. And so it was about that region in the low country of Beaufort where my grandfather was from. So it was my like, oh, okay, this is unique. But when I went to college, I remember being in my speech class and we had to give an informational speech. And so people were doing speeches on all kinds of things. I said, I'm going to talk about Gullah Geechee culture. And so I went, and back then we didn't have the internet. So I had to go and run things off and mimeograph things. And, I was able to do a whole speech helping people to understand the connection of the people in the low country to the people who still reside in Africa. And, I just thought that I was in mass communications. And so I always knew that I spoke differently. And, while some people had a twang, I had this very rhythmic way of speaking. And I knew it would be a challenge for broadcast, but I was still, willing to embrace who I was. And, I can code switch sort of kind of, but some days you're going to get what it is.
Right.
Whatever it is, it's going to be. Subjects and verbs might not be, we might split the infinitives. We're gonna do what we need to do, but you're gonna figure out what it is I'm talking about by the end of what
Exactly.
we're talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
Exactly. I think right before you got on, me and Rob, I said something, and he just buzzed out. He said country and culture because whatever it was, I think I minds or something. I don't know, even remember
I
what it was
texted
because it
you.
came out so effortlessly. But I definitely can relate to that. What
Yeah.
were you saying, Rob?
No, I said I texted you because she made a fish sandwich. I said, let me see your fish sandwich. And I spelled but my mom's side of the family is from Charleston. And
Okay.
after I graduated, I lived there for several years. I love the Gullah Geechee culture. I went on the Gullah tour while I was still in school as well, which gave me a deeper understanding, outside of just spending almost every summer of my childhood in Charleston. And it is a very beautiful thing. And I just want to personally thank you for being such a wonderful representation. Thank you so much.
And you're welcome.
I miss the food.
Yeah.
What is your favorite low country dish?
I think my favorite low country dish would have to be red rice. And the reason
Yes.
when I think about that particular dish, it connects so much to the jollof rices that are cooked in Africa. And so a jollof rice, of course, has the base. It's usually a tomato base. Some people try to say it's a Mexican rice. I'm like, no, 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 no.
No.
It's red rice. And you gotta, put the vegetables of the onion and the green pepper. And if you're not vegan or keto or whatever you're doing, you need to put a little bacon grease, a little
Mm.
sausage in there. You have to get the roux right. And so, you know, there's some people talking about they use spaghetti sauce, but you got to use that tomato paste. You got to use some crushed tomatoes. And so I think because that dish, when I prepare that dish, I previously lived in the DMV area and I prepared it, and someone from Ghana was there and she said, "Oh, red rice." And so a person from Ghana, they're going to get excited because they recognize like that too as a part of their culture. It's a jollof in its own version of it. So, yeah, definitely. And some
Yeah,
people
that
say
reminded
jollof
me.
or jollof. Yeah.
There's a book, Wandering in Strange Lands. I'm
Okay.
not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's by Morgan Jenkins. And
Mhm.
she basically travels that path of how so many pieces of our culture are mimicked in that trade, in the
Yeah.
transatlantic trade, and
Uh-huh.
like that layering of
Uh-huh.
jollof rice versus red rice, and
Uh-huh.
how similar it is, and it's like preserving the culture
Mm-hmm.
through food, through song. There's just so many different elements of the things that we're naturally attracted to, that we think we're
Mm-hmm.
just naturally attracted to it, but it comes from such deeper rooted places.
Yeah,
So
she actually interviewed me for the book. I don't know if I get any credit, but I was actually we did an interview for that.
really
Mm-hmm.
awesome.
Yeah.
Congrats. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was a great book. I listened to it on audiobook.
Okay.
But I think that it was really, it was a very close knit story. Even listening to your story, like these little pieces, they remind me of mine. And I don't know if that's just growing up in the South and feeling like you don't fit,
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that you fit even more. I feel like you have to zoom out to get that perspective, and then
Mm-hmm.
really be dedicated to authenticity, and being your authentic self, and showing that, and showing up as that. And I want to talk about your book
Mm-hmm.
in just a minute, but since we're
Mm-hmm.
on the subject of food,
Mm-hmm.
that is another area that just healthy living and healthy lifestyle, that I have followed you in growing vegetables, and really emerging yourself into a healthier way of living, and keeping, still making dishes, but balance, and finding that balance that at one point wasn't a choice. I feel like it wasn't a choice for us to actually have the best of foods.
Mm-hmm.
So we made these foods our own, and now it's like extracting from that the history and value in it, but then also putting a healthy twist on certain things. So, how did you navigate to your food journey?
I mean, number one, as soon as we got into COVID, I think a lot of people realized, if you were paying attention, that, if you were not the healthiest of person, that COVID would not be kind to you. It's
Right.
not kind to anyone. So, for me, it was really about, okay, so if I need to build my immunity, if I need to strengthen my body, if I need to minimize my comorbidities, how do I do it? And so, in most cases, some people will attempt to do that with medication, but we also know that the body can heal itself. And so, because of what it is that we consume, I knew that diet and exercise would be my path to that. There are a number of things out of our control. So the water in some ways is out of our control, because you got to wash your body. So, there are contaminants in our water. So I can't necessarily do that much about that, other than go to God's healing acres and drink from the spring.
Right,
So, I think people have to figure out what can you control. And so children
right,
can't necessarily control maybe what they are given to eat, but at some point in time, you can decide, what is it that I can control. I can control what I choose to eat. I can control how I choose to prepare it. I can control how often I eat. I can control how late I eat. And then I can also control how I move my body, because we also know that physical exercise helps to heal the body.
very, very, very true. And taking matters into your own control instead of that blaming is very important. It's definitely been a place in my life that I feel like I transitioned drastically when I shifted from that mindset of like, why me and woe
Mm-hmm.
is me, to like, all right, this just is what it is. Whatever the cards are, these are the cards, and this is what I have to deal with. And so this is how I'm choosing to play the game. So yes, kudos on the health changes. I like it. Me and Rob talk about that a lot. Rob does walking. I was walking before, but I have not continued with the weather, which I think is an excuse. But I did transition to another exercise. So anyway,
Excellent.
so tell us about your book. Name of the book is Digging for Intimacy, Sex, Sensuality, and Loving God. And it's a spiritual autobiography, which
Yeah.
is a nutshell in itself, which I love because I'm a
Yeah.
preacher's kid, and I think a lot of people need this book.
They need
Looking,
it.
they need it.
They
So I want
need
to
it.
hear about it from your words. I don't want to tainted in any way. So tell me more about it.
Well, the idea of writing the book. This is my second book. My first book is Diggin For Treasure: Jewels of Hope When Pressure and Time Collide. So that's also a spiritual autobiography, but that focuses more on um, many of the stories come from my time in graduate school. So I spent 7 consecutive years in graduate schools in 2 programs. So I went from the PhD to a master's program at Duke in divinity. So I would do a weekly like blog post, email blast. And so people started to ask me to compile all of that. So that's the first book. So it's really good for church folks, for your grand aunts, for people who like a good little story. Mm-hmm. Now, this second book.
Did you ruffle some feathers?
Yeah, the second book is for, it's for a different demographic of people. So we're still in the pandemic. So around summer in, July, and people started to die and things were happening with George Floyd, and it just seems like the world was burning. I realized that I had to get back to my writing because I believe that words heal. And so I started to really kind of reflect on what was my situation. And I realized something that I really haven't publicly shared. So you're getting an exclusive, that being in a relationship was becoming an idol for me. Okay. And I think some people don't realize, they think that a car, a house, a spouse, your children can be idols, tangible things, but there are intangible things that can also be idolatrous in our lives. And so as I took a step back to reflect on that idol of wanting to be in a relationship, I realized that throughout the course of my adulthood, that this idol was always present. And so as I started to think about, the entries I had written in my journal, some notes I had scribbled, some stream of consciousness I had been going through, conversations with my girlfriends, I thought that I really needed to write a book for other people who had made relationships an idol and they didn't even know it. And in the process of holding up these relationships, you've lost yourself, and in some ways you've disconnected from God. And so that is the premise of the book. And it's 10 chapters with reflection questions at the end. There's a resource list as it relates to, one of the things as it relates to wellness or health is I focus, I think, I'm a ordained minister. So, I believe that the church, as a Christian minister, the church can't just serve you to give you a good hoop and a shout and a good sermon. But I believe that the church, the body of Christ, really needs to consider the whole person. And so I've come to the space of thinking, what if the church had been more invested in my sexuality? Because I'm formed by the church. I am a worker of the church. But what if the church had more to say about my sexuality as I was growing up in the church? How would that have impacted my life? And so, I take readers on that journey, starting out talking about growing up in the church and how did I see relationships talked about? How did I see people in relationships? What did I grow up thinking about sex based on the relationships I saw in church as well as the relationships I saw in my home?
Rob, you look like you have something to say.
my mind is blown.
It's gonna leave. It is gonna blow your mind.
It's blown. Because I agree with you because I think that's the problem some people have with the church. They feel like the church only really gives you a half or a fourth of the full story, and it's like you are opening the door to say, hey, I understand that you're an entire person, so let me give you the spiritual aspect of all of these things, not just this one path of you need to do good and be nice and blah blah. You're a person. You have wants, you have needs, you have sexual desires. Let me give you a guide on how to kind of sort through those things through my own experiences, and that is highly important. And I'm gonna be honest, I have not read a book in a very long time. I want to read this book.
And you need to read this book, and I don't know what your sexual orientation is, but you need to read it either, if you are in relationship with women, You need to read it so you understand in some ways what they bring with them. Okay, if you have sisters, if
Oh
you have
Lord.
aunties. And so I think that's the thing. People don't realize when you get into relationships, you're bringing in generations of people and relationships
Yes.
and baby daddy and baby mama drama and all these things
Yep.
then come to your doorstep. And it's like, not only can you not trust a big butt and a smile, you can't trust what they're bringing because you need to have more conversations. And, we are, a number of us are broken people, being with broken people, building broken families. Now we have broken children. So my prayer is that as people would read the book, that if you haven't healed, you can begin the healing process. And if you didn't realize you needed to be healed, then you can identify, well, wow, there are some wounds that I have not addressed. And this book has opened up that space to say, I might need a therapist, or
Yes.
I might I might be a hoe and maybe I don't want a hoe no more. So it opens up a conversation, okay? Wherever you are, you know what I'm saying? Wherever you
And
are.
I love
this
that.
is this is a very special message personally because I told you I grew up a preacher's kid and my own experience. I was always the different one in my family, and I felt those pressures of not just pressures of growing up as a woman, but then also pressures of trying to understand, well, why are these things, certain things, a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
or why is this talked about, or what do they mean? Because
Yeah,
a lot was coded
yeah,
and coded to not even make a lot of sense. Going back to, you have to unlearn so much
yeah,
later in life, and my spirituality and sexuality and all of these pieces of myself as a young woman, I would say maybe 3 years ago, I kind of went on a journey of this. I was digging for intimacy of myself, like
mm-hmm.
loving myself, learning myself, embracing all of the pieces of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely, I took a course, but the book, just in the premise of it, I can relate to it so much
Mm-hmm.
because so many women are confused. I had a girlfriend say, "Oh, you like a whole experience." And it wasn't an experience of like it's connection, not just in a physical sense of experience. It's like connecting on a certain level that for her, it was a like that. You don't do that. You don't say I like you. You don't say what it is that you require or
Mm-hmm.
certain pieces. And so not to get too in depth because everybody has their own idea of intimacy, but I do think intimacy exists between us all, and it's not always this cookie cutter version that we've been fed, or this very watered down version that we've been fed. And it's like if we don't take the responsibility as believers, or as just not even Christianity per se, but spiritual beings, we all have I don't know, like a level of intimacy that needs to be experienced. And so I
Yeah.
definitely appreciate the book.
And people, if you look even beyond sexual intimacy, you see it in the Bible. You see David and Jonathan. People don't want to talk about it, but they had an intimate relationship. It wasn't sexual. It was just their spirits were intimate. Their spirits were connected.
Yeah.
And so
Right,
people don't realize, we just think intimacy is about jumping in the bed, licking, sucking,
right,
whatever you're going to do. And that's not what it is. It's about, that's why we say sometimes people have emotional affairs because
Oh.
you develop an intimacy with someone because they hear you, they see you, they talk to you, they connect with you. And so that's, I'm not a therapist, but, people develop very deep ties with individuals and their spirits appear to be knit together. And so, I want people, for some women, this book will be a challenge because it will confront things that they've always thought was wrong. Or in some ways, if you've been married a long time and you've never thought about intimacy in a broader sense other than what you got,
Mm.
then you'll be like, whoa, okay. I think it also kind of will help people to understand. intimacy, if you're intimate with someone, the goal is that you're satisfying them, especially with sexual intimacy, and they're satisfying you. Some people don't even know what that means. Some people are just, if you think back to The Color Purple, Miss Celia
Right.
is laying there, and then, she asked the wife, how did he die on top of me? Like, there's no
Right.
intimacy. These are
Right.
people who are just going through the acts. And so, I think there are people in marriages just going through the act of sex and not necessarily experiencing that deep intimacy that can be accomplished even when the act does not exist. So when I say
Exactly.
digging for intimacy, I'm talking about, searching for someone that you connect with, searching for someone who cares about you deeply, searching for someone who cares about you if there is no sex. And so we've all been on this exploration, and we know with women, sometimes we might choose to have sex, but technically we don't want the act of sex. We want the intimacy. We want to be held. We want to be talked to. We want to cuddle. We don't necessarily want you rubbing on, we don't want you grinding on us. We want you to be talking to us. Okay. We want
Yeah.
you to be stimulating our minds, but as a negotiation, we'll hop in bed with you because we're like, well, maybe he'll hold me for 30 minutes. And we know that usually doesn't happen. So it's that digging process. And, I call it the Digging for Treasure series. So this is the second book in that series because I think we're always on an adventure and excavation of trying to find something that we are in need of.
Oh my goodness. Just
I can
flip
see it
my
on your face.
entire
Go
dating
ahead.
life upside down. What am I gonna do? No,
Be a better man. Be a better man. Be a better man.
Yes.
I no, I you know, I do well. I do well. You just actually broke some things down that I never thought about, especially from the perspective of a woman. Because I ask questions, I'm very inquisitive, and I like to know what makes you all tick. Like I love women, and I like to know what makes you all tick. And I ask these questions to get certain feedback, just to figure out what your motivations are. What are you looking for? What is it that will make you feel whole? Um, and the way you just described digging for it makes a lot of sense because there's been times where I've asked questions that I thought were seemingly simple and I would get a response like I don't know, and I'm like, how do you not know? Like, because I feel like I'm very well in tune with myself, but I have to realize that everyone's journey is different and everyone has different experiences, and whatever experiences they had with the guy before me, are vastly different. That's something I've actually come to discover, especially as I've gotten older. I've just had women say, I've never had anyone ask me that. Never had anyone care as much. I don't know what to do with this. No one's ever bought me anything. No one's ever taken the time to consider my feelings. And I'm thinking, because this is the way I was raised, that's normal. Like that's what a man should be doing, or anyone should be doing as a person. Like these are basic things. These aren't even me going above and beyond. So what you said just really just connected a lot of dots.
And so you have to remember she didn't know and then he didn't know. And so you got two people who
Right.
don't know. And so in the non-knowing, then what you use as a model is what you see other people do. And
Right.
so she may want something from you, not necessarily because she wants it, but maybe that's what her mama got. So she might be asking you to pay a light bill, and you're like, "Why are you
I'm not
asking me
paying
for a
that.
light bill?" And but that is how possibly some woman that she saw as a model, that is how they negotiated love and
Love.
intimacy
Yes.
Exactly.
through a transactional, I'm going to give you this if you pay my light bill. And you're like, but that doesn't even make sense. And she doesn't need the light bill paid, but that's what she knows. And so we just have to be mindful. And because we don't take enough time, whether in the home or at church, to talk about navigating relationships, we are all pretty much just kind of figuring this out based on what we see now on social media. When I was growing up, what you saw on BET, Video Soul, what you heard on the radio, what your friends were talking about. Tell those people we busy over here.
I know he's
Oh, I don't
fired.
know why it rang because my phone and my tablet are both on silent. They're both on silent. What is happening?
I
Apple,
don't know.
do better.
They interrupting this message from the minister of God. Okay, they interrupting it. Okay. But no, I think if we could start having better understanding of sexuality, who we are, so you buy someone something, you're like, oh, it's just like something small. But if no one has ever treated her that way, or she felt like, oh, he bought me something, he doesn't want something from me, then that's a new experience.
That has been the pitfall of most of my dating. Me being
Yeah.
nice and then
Yeah.
giving you a hug and saying I'll see you later.
Yeah.
They're like, what is he up to?
So you get into the friend zone early. You probably go into the friend zone a lot.
I live there. I have a 5-bedroom home, sitting on 3 acres.
But are you in the friend zone?
Yeah, I get friend zoned a lot.
Yeah, because people aren't used to nice guys, and so the saying nice guys finish last sometimes, because we don't know what to do with that. And so, sometimes women they're going to go for the thug who calls them once a week and who doesn't do anything nice because they don't really know any better. And they start to think, well, what's wrong with him? He's just too nice. That's just strange to me. I don't even know. And once you try to figure out, who you are, then you recognize, like, no, this is just a genuinely nice guy who just wants to be nice and who possibly wants to love me.
And they come back 7 years later, like, hi, and
with two babies. I
was gonna leave that out.
But no, that's how they come back.
There's nothing wrong with that. But then after they've been mistreated and mishandled, then they come back and they're like, oh, can you love me now? And it's like, oh, I got to do too much taping up. Where's my no?
Not even that, but I'm not even in the same place anymore. Like that part of me and that version of me that was interested in you and all those years ago has moved on. And I'm glad you brought that up, because some people take that as a diss, and I was like, yeah, that's funny, y'all, but that's the truth. Like, when you try to come back around, that might not be the same person a year later. Even without the kids, that guy might be, or that woman might be in a totally different space, and you just don't even fit. So
yeah, and I write about that in one of the chapters about a relationship that I had, and after I'll just put it like this: the chapter's called "Lessons from the Lion's Den," because this guy that I dated, he was from Barbados. He called himself a lion. And so
that book sounds spicy. Go ahead. I'm listening.
And so we tried to reconnect years later, and it just did not gel emotionally, physically. We were in different places. And so while there was a lot of passion, in one season, it just did not exist. And so it's like, yeah, no, we're not doing this. Yeah.
How do you feel about sexuality, the female sexuality? Because I feel that so often sexuality is a card that is given to the man, and we are sexual beings. And I know I would just like to hear your point of view, specifically from the fact of a more spiritual-based perspective, because I think we are definitely sexual beings, and that is a card that a lot of people like to dismiss when we act as such. And I'm not talking about overacting, just acting as a sexual being.
Well, time doesn't permit for us to talk about the ways in which women use their sexuality in the Bible, or the ways in which their bodies were used. And maybe they didn't even give permission for their bodies to be used. If you think about a Hagar, she is a slave woman and she has sex with her master. And, it's not like Hagar was like, hey, how you doing? No, Hagar wasn't doing that. And so there's that aspect of sexuality. And then we saw some instances in the Bible where you have a Ruth and you have some other characters who use their sexuality to get what they want. And so, I think we don't really talk about the fullness of sexuality as it relates to, I talk about in the book, we're trained as young girls, especially young church girls, don't do it, but nobody tells us what not to do. Nobody talks about, so a boy might be sat down and you might talk about, okay, you're going to have wet dreams, or you're going to have these issues. You might have an ejaculation. Nobody talks with us about how our body parts are stimulated. And so, it really comes to, I think in some ways, helping a woman even understand her anatomy, what we'll be stimulated, because that's what gets us into trouble. They tell us not what not to do, and then we hit, puberty, and things start tingling, and nobody
Yep.
told us about tingling. And then
Right.
somebody touches the tingle, and then from there it's a wrap, okay? Because
Yep.
nobody told us the way our body would respond to touch, to sexual touch. And of course, in the book, I talk about, there have been women who have been touched as well as males, but there have been people who were touched inappropriately. So for them, they didn't have a choice in how they were first experiencing sexuality or first tapping into their sexuality. So that's an issue in itself. And then no one further talks about it. So someone says, don't tell your mama. But if you have a full understanding, you're like, no, my mama told me not to ever let nobody to touch my, you really are able to, go and speak up for yourself and own, like so-and-so touched me. You told me not to ever let anybody touch me there. And so, I think even adult women don't really understand the fullness of their being. And there are adult women, I can't say I've surveyed all of them, but they've never had even, they've
Climax.
they've never climaxed. They've never
That
had
is a fact.
they've never experienced the fullness of sex, and so they've done the act. But
Right.
if you were to ask them, so what happens when your body, and they're like, well, maybe if he do this, maybe they're like, but that's the honest truth,
It is.
Right.
So the
It
book
is.
is very raw and honest, and some church people are going to be like, Lord, she needs to just give all of her certifications because she's a heathen. But we would not be here if people did not get together and have sex. I think,
Right. And that is why I think it's a very necessary word, and I think it's a timely word. And I think that we have learned that ignorance is not bliss in the end. Like you get through these seasons of ignorance, but at some point you have to be responsible and you have to own, like, all right, why is this happening to me? Like, it's happening because I have ignored this area of my life, and really like going back to that owning of that space, owning who you are and understanding that it is very unique, like for women and for men. That is a natural part of how we became and all of that. And so when you have a better, deeper understanding, I think that it yields better results.
Yeah, and I mean, I think women we're not taught to own our bodies or to own our sexuality. So, if we have sex and we don't feel anything, we just say, I didn't feel nothing. But I remember, being a younger woman and I thought to myself, you mean I got to go repent for that? I got to go repent for that? That was a waste of a sin. That was a wasted sin there.
Not a wasted sin.
Other women have had that experience. You were like, I have just wasted a sin. I got to go to the altar and fast for that.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a real one.
That's reality. That's reality.
I'm gonna high five you on that one.
But we're never given permission to say things like that. We're never given permission. So men can have their locker room talk and they can grade and they can put people on a scale, but we never give ourselves permission to talk about our experiences, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's pleasurable, whether it's enjoyable. There's a question I put in the book, and I can't remember how it's worded, but it talks about, how would you like to be touched? How would you like to experience intimacy? Giving people space to say, for somebody, it might be, I want my feet rubbed. For somebody else, it might be like, I want my nipples rubbed. Somebody else might say, I just want somebody to rub my head. And so, but be able to name it. And because we don't give people space to name it, then we just say, oh, intimacy is when we have sex once a week, or intimacy is A, B, and C. And actually, you might just love somebody rubbing your elbow. And it's the strangest thing, but that might be intimate to you. I just love it when you rub my elbow in a circle. Okay, it's like, all right, that's easy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
And that's it's so unique to the person. I think that intimacy is different from just the boxes that we've been designed or that have been created. Everything's a box. Like you just go in the box. What box do I fit in? And
Yeah.
at some point you have to realize that none of these boxes, like we don't fit in boxes. We're not meant to be boxed in. And I
Yeah.
think that sexuality, intimacy, all of these different pieces are such a evolving space that
Yeah.
you do have to create space because it's unique. The
Yeah.
space is for the unique being that you are, that I am, that Rob is. And so there does need to be a space that fits for each one of those people.
Yeah, and I also think, even though I write it from the perspective of a single woman, an unmarried woman, a woman who's never been married, I think people who are married will benefit. And I think people who are preparing for marriage, because I think that's why marriages have a lot of challenges, is money and sex. Okay.
Yeah.
Those are two of the biggest issues. But unless you tap into your intimacy, male and female, or male, male, however your situation is designed, you won't be able to share intimacy with someone else until you truly tap
To your own.
into your own intimacy, your needs, your wants.
Yep.
I'm a talker, so I need to be with someone who is a listener. Okay, and to be like Rob and says, well, and what happened next? Well, how did that make you feel? If you are a person and you start tuning me out, then we have no intimacy. Okay. I need you to listen to me tell this story. I know it's a long story, but just grunt every 2 seconds. Say, and oh, whoa, yeah.
Look at
That's a
Jessica.
turn
Look
on
at
for
Jessica.
me.
Look at Jessica.
That is a turn on for me.
I feel like it's a mirror image
Oh
in a
my
way.
goodness.
A lot of
Because
y'all like
listening
that.
to you talk is so many pieces of my personality. It's just like, oh yeah,
Yeah, you don't have to
That's
buy me
why.
a handbag, but if you will sit and listen to me,
Yes.
and what she do, and what did you say? You didn't say that, did you? Oh man, you can't fight the lady.
You
If I just need that.
you just shed light on something for me. I'm gonna have to do some personal reflection now because you talked
Yeah,
about how basically women for so long have been muted about their sexuality, and it kind of explains what. This is just my opinion, my perspective. It kind of explains what we're seeing nowadays with some of these challenges, the way women are just expressing themselves. I think so many women with loud voices have come out and said, "Hey, we can talk about this stuff too. We can do this too." And now there's an explosion of it, and we're trying to figure out. Some women are like, "This is how I want to express myself. This is how I feel," and I feel like some are kind of like, and men too, or some are kind of like, "Well, I'm gonna hop on this wave. Nah, I'm not with that. Let me try this one. Nah, I'm not like that." So it's like we're trying to figure it out as we go along because this is the first time we've really been able to just be open and free with this kind of conversation. So I kind of like you changed my perspective on quite a few things because I never thought about it like that.
yeah, but you have to. It means, hopefully, my prayer is that the book "Digging for Intimacy: Sex, Sensuality, and Loving God," available on Amazon on February the 9th.
That was gonna tell me one more time.
We gotta plug it.
Yes.
Yes.
Hopefully it will begin discussions. I want people to be in the barbershop having this discussion. And you can say, I used to date this girl one time. And when she talked about it in the book. And I remember that girl. And that's what I'm hoping will happen when we get back to a space of being in the communal settings. It can happen virtually. But I want people to start reassessing their roles, the roles they played in relationships. I want them to assess and reassess how they love themselves, how they view their bodies, how they have shared their bodies, how they have been in relationship with other people. There might be instances where someone will feel, man, I really need to apologize to someone, or I need to apologize to myself for whatever I caused that may have brought me harm, and I talk about those hidden wounds that no one has addressed, no one has attempted to put a salve on. And so, I want this book to be more than something you read and it's like, oh, I'm just an observer. I want you to be a participant observer, because I want you to think about your own healing journey, your own digging for intimacy. Because as long as you have breath in your body, that means there's still a role for intimacy in your life. And it doesn't have to be sexual intimacy, but it could be you developing better friendships. It could be you developing a better relationship with your children if you have them. It could be you asking people for what it is that you need, because you have never asked for what you need. So people give you what they think you want, and it's really not what you need, nor is it what you want. So hopefully, me being honest, transparent, putting it all out, kind of exposing some areas of my life that I should probably just keep between me and Jesus until I go home to be with the Lord. I'm hoping, that it does start a healing process, because I want a movement to start. And, you talked about the challenges online. There are people doing the busted challenge online, and they need to bust it in their bedrooms with their husbands, or or their wives. They need to bust it in the house. But as you said, social media has said, oh, you can be sensual, you can be sexual. But how about you try to figure out, so how do I not just bust it online, but how do I take that same energy and I bring it into whatever relationship that I'm in?
Yes.
If in fact it's a romantic relationship,
Mhm.
and we busting it. and
Keyword
you know,
we.
we, you know,
Yes.
and, and and I'm a minister of the gospel, so I do understand that, you know, people believe that you should only have intimacy and sex should only be done in the context of a marital relationship. But I'm also very I just know that the reality is people are having sex. And so if you are having sex, I want you to just honor God. I want you to honor your body, and I want you to honor your partner. And at the end of the day, you and God have to have the conversation about what has happened. We all have to give an account for ourselves. But, if you're going to do it, might as well do it right, because you don't want to
Right.
waste.
Right, because you don't want to waste the sin. I don't. You don't want to be repenting over foolishness. That's what we don't want to be doing. Okay.
And I know people are going to listen and say, oh my God, she's a heretic. No, I'm not. I'm just being honest.
Yes.
Which people need honesty. I'm all for this conversation. This might be one of my favorite interviews, like, because I lived in that box. I grew up in the boxes, and it's such a. There's so many lessons taught that were not spoke. It wasn't like a traditional classroom lesson. It was the lessons that you're just observing as a 7-year-old of how I mean, my grandparents slept in a different bedroom. So when they eventually went separated, and they were elderly at that, they were already like in their 80s. That to me was weird. I was like, why do they sleep? Like, but I remember being confused about it, because at home my parents slept in the same bedroom. So it created
and they made noises at night sometimes.
yes, right. And all of these things, like you're piecing it together from the backside.
Yeah, you're piecing it. And I write about that. I write about being in church. I talk about love languages. I don't go into an in-depth discussion, but I talk about how we learn love languages early. So I reference a couple. They were in my church when I grew up, and the adults would always say, "Oh, he's always rubbing her butt, and he's always all over her in church." And I'm thinking, this is where I should be learning about why married people rubbing each other butt in church. I shouldn't be getting this message from Video Soul on BET about intimacy. So I appreciate them being this model outside of the box of, we're going to do public displays of affection. And we don't care if you're mad that we're at the altar rubbing on each other. And I appreciate that, because now I'm like, okay, everybody else in church looks like they don't touch each other. But this couple, oh yeah.
And who wants to be a part of that club? Like, when you're young and ignorant and not really fully shaped in your thought process, that looks like a boring club to be in. Like, you don't want to be a part of that. So you tend to run to the video soul aspect of intimacy, which you find yourself going back to a major point of honoring yourself, honoring God, and honoring your body, you're not going to necessarily get that from this platform. And so you're going to have to learn through trial and error, mistakes and woes, to come back to like, no, there is a more balanced way in order for me to experience intimacy, sexuality, that also honors me, the person, the soul of me, honors my body, and I think honors God. I think when you match up with those people, that is an honoring in itself.
So. Yeah. And so I think, that's the message I have. I'm sure there will be some pushback because people will say, you don't need to be having sex. You don't need to be talking about it. But if we don't talk about it, you're going to get in a marriage, you're going to be miserable, and then you're going to be in somebody's inbox or DM on Facebook or Instagram when somebody likes your picture too many times. Then you're going to have a situation because you didn't come to the marriage, you didn't come to the relationship, saying, feeling free enough to say, you know what, I'm not satisfied and I don't want to respond to the DM messages. I want to make my relationship, I want to make my marriage work. I want to have fullness in it. And so, that's what honors God. God is concerned about all of us, and God is not just concerned about me on Sunday. God is concerned about me, who God knit me in my mother's wombs. And so not 2 wombs, but 1. So, I just want people to leave the book feeling like, one, they don't have to feel so much shame, because I think women carry a lot of shame about the trial and error. And some of us would not have had the trial and error if you had given us the pre-test to start with, then we wouldn't have to go through the trial and error. But nobody gave us those lessons that we needed to really prepare us for womanhood.
Amen. Let the church say amen. I don't have any further questions because, I know we're on a time cap a little bit. But, Rob, did you have any other questions?
I don't have any other questions. I do want to make a comment about the last thing you said, which is important. So those of you who may have a problem with this book, do yourself this favor. In this world of digital media, like, there's almost no way you can control what your child or children are going to see. And if they have friends, they're going to see it, right? So why don't you take advantage of the opportunity of being their parent and sitting them down and having a discussion. Let them get it from a reliable source, that being you, so that when they're exposed to these things, they actually know how to navigate it. Because don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, no, this is bad. That don't work. Let me tell you. Sometimes it makes them want to do it more.
That don't work.
It don't work. It ain't never work. It ain't gonna work in the future. And because there's this curiosity. It's like, so I shouldn't do it.
But I'm here. So you did it.
Or even worse.
What part of it, like, and when there's so much question.
Yeah, and I think they have age-appropriate conversations. Sometimes I'll read the news, and I saw a story about like a kindergartner performing fellatio on a classmate. Number one, that child had to see it somewhere, whether it was a video, a movie, the parents, and so children are exposed to so much, and so. You can have an 8-year-old and they know more than when I was 14 or 15, they may know more about what's going on because they have access to technology. So, as you said, Rob, the goal is, maybe the questions will be, everyone has to figure out what is age appropriate for their children. Some children, they're not prepared for the conversation. I was talking with a friend who is raising a grandchild who's 13. And he said, he went in to have the conversation about manly things. And the 13-year-old isn't ready because he hasn't progressed to that. He's still playing video games. That little button hasn't clicked on. So, but at least, I applauded him for wanting to have that conversation. I said, well, just continue to have the conversation because one day the button's going to click on and, he'll need to know how his body works, how his body responds, why it's responding. You'll have to have the conversation about whether he likes girls or whether he likes boys, and you continue the conversation. It's a continual conversation. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Simmons, for coming on, Dr. Lecia.
Thank
I
you.
definitely enjoyed the conversation, and I would like to have you back as a follow-up after we take in the book, digest the book. I would like to have another discussion about this a little lengthier and in detail. So,
Okay, we
uh,
can do that. I'm
this was
excited.
good.
Yeah. And Rob, I think, hopefully, I don't know, what's going on with your dating life, but we are some complex creatures, and you can think you have figured us out, and we will change not only our wigs, but we just gonna change on you. So, continue your observation, continue to listen, and, pray. I don't know what your faith journey is. Ask for discernment, because sometimes you are working against wounds. So, someone has been wounded not by you, but by someone 2 relationships ago, and you're still having to nurture that wound, to, take care of that wound, and it's not the wound that you created. So, I just wish you the best, brother.
Why, thank you.
Yes.
Why, thank you. It's very casual right now, but when I'm ready to get back to them, the real life dating, the real life relationship streets, I'll make sure I do that.
Yeah, and you know what? You might want to give whoever the casual person is, give her a copy of the book and see how she responds. That'll tell you a lot. Whether she is able to, one, intellectually have a discussion about it, whether she is able to answer the questions, whether she is able to be honest with you about her past experiences. That would kind of let okay, is this a red alert, or is this someone who is on a healing journey and they recognize that, they want more out of life than they've had in the past. So, that might be a player move. You give
You,
them the book, you see how they think about it, and
And
then
a shame. Look,
this is
it's a win-win.
this is funny to me. I'm definitely gonna add your book because there's,
it's a
um,
win-win.
yeah, I'm gonna add your book to my repertoire for sure.
And there is an ebook version, so there's going to be a softback as well as a ebook. And if she says I don't read, you might want to
I'm
run, because
running.
yeah, if somebody doesn't read, I'm always scared of people say I don't read. I ain't got time to be reading nothing. It's like, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
What you gonna do when the kids have to be virtually homeschool
Listen.
at 2037?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And no instruction because the parents can't figure it out because they don't read. Dr. Lecia, tell our listeners where they can find more about you, keep up with everything that you have going on, your books.
All right. You can visit me at my website. That is drlecia.com. That's DRLECIA.com. You can visit me on Instagram. That's Dr_Lecia, Lecia. You can hit me up on Facebook. I got a Facebook page for Dr. Lecia. That's Facebook.com/Dr. Lecia. And of course on Twitter, that is Dr. Lecia1. DRLECIA, the number 1. So I am just excited about the book, Diggin For Intimacy, Sex, Sensuality, and Loving God, available via Amazon on February the 9th. It's a Tuesday, and it's going to be a good Tuesday.
Awesome. I declare that as well. I cannot wait to check out the book. So, Rob, we're going to kick it to you to close us out with our affiliates. And why you look so stuck? I feel like
because I'm absorbing a lot of this. My life is different. You don't understand.
You look renewed.
My life.
Rob, I'm a whole experience.
Yes.
See?
I look at women totally different now already. I'm that type of person. When I get meaningful information from someone like you, I absorb it and I apply it immediately. Like, I don't even look at women the same anymore. It's different now.
Yeah, and so prayerfully, that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
it's
a good
better.
thing.
Y'all keep going up, and then the more I understand, the better I can do. Our affiliates, ladies and gentlemen. Well, first of all, don't forget Dr. Lecia's information will definitely be in the description, so you can click on those hyperlinks and get straight to her products. And I'm just going to give y'all the quick and dirty version of our affiliates. We have Retro Mimi, for those of you who like to video game like me and you want a game on the go, they sell handheld open source devices. Make sure you check out that link. We have Black Water, who sells water that is actually black and it comes in wonderful flavors. Make sure you check them out. Acre Gold, if you've ever wanted to invest in physical bars of gold, they have a subscription service to where you can pay over time, and once you hit the amount that you will hit the price point, you will get your bar of gold shipped to you in nice discreet packaging. And last but certainly not least, Garner's Garden, who sells wonderful, all natural, organic products, skincare, healthcare, oral healthcare products. I love them. They do a great job. I said last but not least, but I forgot we have a new affiliate. This is only my second time mentioning them. Jot Forms. Anybody in business who needs to, or even if you're not in business, if you need to collect information from a multitude of people, you can create and customize your own forms. Send out a quick and easy link. People can fill out the information and it'll come right back to you automatically. It has been a lifesaver. We use it every time we book someone for this show, ladies and gentlemen. Back to you, Jessica.
Oh, really? Thank you all for joining us. This was a great conversation and dialogue. Thank you, Dr. Lecia, for coming on and speaking with our audience. Continue to be bold and inspiring and vocal and light. You have always been that for me. And so I am very happy to be in a position to amplify your voice, because I don't think I would be here without you. It's definitely, you've given me a lot of lessons along the way. So whether you know that or not, thank you.
Thank you so much for me.
Say it one more time. I missed it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. And as always, Robert, let them know.
Take care of yourself mentally, physically, financially,
and spiritually.
We'll see y'all next time. Peace.
Peace.